Shop the Sherwin-Williams Super Sale and get 40% off paints and stains September 19th through the 24th. With prices starting at $29.39, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
You're walking down a hallway that doesn't exist except in your mind. The walls are lined with paintings you've never seen. There's a window with sunlight that feels familiar, though it shines on nothing real. You take another step, you turn a corner, and suddenly you remember a name you forgot, a place you once loved, or something strange, like all the bones in the human body in order. Welcome to Memory Palace, a mental trick that sounds like sorcery but has been used by ancient philosophers, modern memory champions, and probably by your own brain in ways you don't even realize. In our last episode, we talk about minds that didn't need brains, plants that remember, fungi that send signals, nature's quiet geniuses hiding in plain sight. But what about us? Human brains, and the mysterious ways we store, bend, and sometimes invent memory. What if forgetting is not a failure but a feature? What if memory isn't a file cabinet but a stage play? And what if there are places, real or imagined, where you can make a memory live forever? In this episode, we'll trace the ancient roots of the memory palace technique. We'll explore the science of how memory actually works. We'll wander into the weird corners of forgotten memories, false memories, and even memory superpowers. And finally, we'll walk through a metaphorical door into something a little more magical. Your very own inner archive, your sanctuary of still growing things. This is Mind Beyond Matter, and today's journey might just change how you think about thinking. Hello and welcome to Lil Weird Podcast. I'm your host, Jane, and let's get started. Before Google, there was Cicero. Imagine it's 5th century BCE. You're at the grand banquet, feasting, drinking, talking politics. Then suddenly, the roof collapses. Everyone dies, except you. When rescuers arrive, you're the only one who can identify the victims, not by looking at faces, but by mentally walking through the dining hall, recalling where each person was seated. This isn't a Netflix thriller. This is the legendary tale of Simonides of Ceos, the Greek poet often credited with inventing the memory palace. A moment of trauma unlocked a realization. Our minds are naturally wired to remember places. And if you link those places to ideas, you unlock an ancient mental superpower. The technique, later called the method of loci, became the go-to memory hack of philosophers, orators, and scholars long before paper was common. Cicero used it, so did monks, lawyers, and even Sherlock Holmes. Though he's fictional, yes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle gave him a mind palace. In medieval times, people didn't just imagine places. They'd build mental churches, towers, libraries, amphitheaters. Each room stored something, a speech, a prayer, a sacred text, a naughty joke. Yes, really, some places were wild. The idea was simple but powerful. Take a place you know well, fill it with things you want to remember. Then, when you need to recall something, just walk through that place in your mind. Sounds easy? It is, if you've got practice. Memory athletes today still use this method to memorize the order of a shuffled deck of cards in under 20 seconds. But here's what makes it so weirdly human. The memory palace isn't just a trick. It's an invitation to see memory as something spatial, emotional, even symbolic. We don't just remember facts. We remember the where, the feel, the story. And that's where this gets even more interesting. Alright, let's break it down. How does even memory work, and why is it so good at keeping the weirdest things, like that embarrassing moment from 8th grade but not your neighbor's name? It all starts with sensory memory. This is your brain's doorman. Everything you see, hear, smell, touch, it all passes through here first. But sensory memory doesn't hold the door open for long. Just a flash, a whisper, a blink. Like when you catch a scent that reminds you of someone, but the moment's gone before you can name it. That's sensory memory doing its job, fast and fleeting. But if the information sticks around for a bit longer, it moves into what we call short term memory, or sometimes working memory. Think of this like your brain's sticky note. You hold the phone number for a few seconds or repeat a name over and over in your head before it disappears. It's that moment when you're walking into the kitchen and suddenly forget why you're there. Yep, short term memory just ghosted you. Working memory is like short term memory's smarter cousin. It doesn't just hold info, it juggles it. This is what you use when you're doing a mental math or trying to follow a recipe while also texting your friend about what went wrong with your cake. It's quick, flexible, but easily distracted. And then we have the vault, long term memory. This is where the big stuff lives, your childhood memories, your favorite song lyrics, that random trivia you don't know why you remember, like the fact that octopuses have three hearts. But here's the twist, not everything in long term memory is neatly filed away. Your brain doesn't just retrieve memories like opening a save file, it rebuilds them every single time. And when it reconstructs, sometimes it improvises. It fills in blanks, mixes details, adds dramatic flair. That's why two people can remember the same event so differently. Memory isn't a recording, it's a remix. So the next time someone accuses you of misremembering something, just say, "It's not me, it's my brain's creative direction." Now, here's where things get a little weird. Because if you think memory is just about remembering where you left your keys or what you had for breakfast, think again. Memory is not just a mental filing cabinet. It's a trickster, a shapeshifter, a magician that sometimes make things appear and sometimes disappear. So let's dig into some of the strangest, most curious memory cases ever documented. First up, H. Sam are the highly superior autobiographical memory. Imagine being able to remember every single day of your life. What you wore, what you ate, what song was playing in the background. Now imagine not being able to turn that off. That's what Jill Price lives with. She was the first on case of H. Sam, and she describes it as a blessing and a curse. Sure, she remembers birthdays and dates, but she also remembers every heartbreak, every awkward moment, every time she said something cringe in 2004. People with HSAM don't just recall memories, they relive them. Their brains are constantly flipping through flashbacks like a TikTok feed with no pause button. Now, let's talk about false memories and the Mandela effect. Raise your hand if you swear it was mirror, mirror on the wall and not magic mirror on the wall. Yeah, me too. That's the Mandela effect, a kind of collective false memory where entire groups of people remember something that apparently never happened. Some say it's proof of alternate realities. Scientists say it's the brain filling in gaps using what it expects it to be true. Either way, it's a great reminder that memory isn't a video recording. It's more like a choose your own adventure book with someone else holding the pen. Childhood memories that aren't real, also common. Ever have a vivid memory of something from when you were 3 or 4, but your mom swears it never happened? Chances are your brain stitched that memory together from bits of photos, family stories, and sensory impressions. Our minds love a good story. So even when the footage is fuzzy, the brain goes, "No worries, I'll just fill in the blanks." And boom, now you've got a memory of the time you fought a giant duck in the backyard. Then there's amnesia, both retrograde and anterograde. You've seen it in movies, but real life cases are even stranger. Take Clive Waring. He was a brilliant musician who, after a viral infection, lost the ability to form new memories. He lives in a loop, always thinking it's the first time he's waking up, but sit him down in front of a piano, he can play perfectly. Because memory doesn't live in just one place. It has secret hideouts in your brain. And memory isn't just a human thing. Let's talk about planarians, those squishy little flatworms. Scientists cut off their heads, yeah, rude, let them grow back, and found that they still remembered training they had before the decapitation. Excuse me, worms with regenerating memory. Even plants get in on the action. Remember Mimosa Pudica, our shy little friend who folds when touched? Turns out it can learn that certain touches aren't dangerous and remember that days later. No brain, no nerves, just vibes. And don't get me started with octopuses and crows. They solve puzzles, recognize faces. Some octopuses even hold grudges. Three hearts, eight arms, and apparently a memory for drama. So yeah, memory is wild, it lives in minds with no brains, and sometimes vanishes from minds that once had too much. It's not a perfect system, but it's the one we've got, and maybe it's less about accuracy and more about meaning. Let's finally step into the memory palace itself. Not just a symbol, but as a fascinating, scientifically grounded technique that stretches back to ancient Greece and somehow still shows up today in everything from Sherlock Holmes to TikTok study hacks. So, what exactly is a memory palace? At its core, it's a mental visualization technique rooted in psychological concept called the method of loci. The method of loci works like this. You imagine a familiar location, like your childhood home, your walk to school, or even a fantasy castle, and then assign each room or landmark a specific piece of information you want to remember. To retrieve the memory later, you mentally walk through that place and pick up the details along the way. This technique taps into spatial memory, which is known to be deeply ingrained in the human brain. We evolved as creatures who had to remember paths, landscapes, and shelter. Our hippocampus, the part of the brain involved in memory formation, is also our internal GPS. It lights up both when navigating real places and when imagining them. That's why imagining a room isn't just whimsical, it's actually practical. As we've said in the introduction a while ago, this method traces all the way back to Simonides of Ceos, a Greek poet who legend says discovered the technique after a tragic banquet accident. He was the only survivor of a collapsed hall and could recall exactly where each guest was seated simply by picturing the layout. From there, it became a powerful tool for orators, scholars, and philosophers in the classical world, especially those who had to memorize long speeches without notes. Later, during the Middle Ages, monks and theologians use elaborate mental palaces to memorize scripture, prayers, and moral lessons. These weren't just random rooms, they were meaningful places, sometimes filled with symbolic objects, a torch for divine truth, a serpent for temptation, a window for enlightenment. Here's what makes the memory palace so effective. It combines visual, spatial, and emotional encoding. The more bizarre or vivid the image, the easier it sticks. Want to remember a grocery list? Don't just write it down mentally. Instead, picture a loaf of bread dancing on your sofa, a jug of milk leaking onto your carpet, a tomato bouncing on your bed. It sounds silly, but that's the point. The weirder, the better. Studies have shown that memory champions use this technique religiously. In fact, most people who compete in memory championships don't have photographic memory. They just use mnemonic systems like this. Of course, the memory palace isn't the only tool in the kit. Let's talk about some others. The peg system. This is where you design pegs or pre-memorized associations like rhyming words or numbers to a new info. For example, 1 is a bun, 2 is a shoe, and then you hang your facts on those images. Chunking. This is breaking down long strings into smaller groups. This is how we remember phone numbers like 0917 555 1322. It feels easier than 0917 555 1322, right? And then acronyms and acrostics like PEMDAS for the order of operations or ROGB for rainbow colors. And then there's the major system, a more complex number to sound code that memory athletes use to memorize digits of pi or long binary strings. These techniques show us that memory isn't passive, it's a creative, active process. It's less about retaining information and more about designing the path toward retrieval. Now, if all of this sounds like something Sherlock Holmes would do, you're not wrong. In the BBC Sherlock series, Benedict Cumberbatch famously retreats into his mind palace to solve cases, zooming through mental corridors filled with criminal files and visual metaphors. In real life, this is inspired by memory palace techniques used by real detectives, lawyers, and yes, even students during exam week. The technique pops up in Hannibal, The Queen's Gambit, The OA, and even Game of Thrones. Meanwhile, on TikTok and YouTube, students are building palaces out of their favorite video games, dream homes, even IKEA catalogs. Yes, you can remember your biology terms by planting them in the living room of your Animal Crossing island. In a world where we've outsourced memory to search engines, Why should we still care about techniques like this? Because memory isn't just storage, it's identity. It's decision making, it's creativity. By practicing memory techniques, we train our attention. We reconnect our ability to focus, associate, and reflect, all of which are crucial in a world overflowing with noise. So, I remember reading this article from one of my multimedia classes. It talked about how in this digital age, we don't really form memories the way we used to. Not because we've lost the ability, but because we've outsourced it. Like, think about the last time you went somewhere beautiful, a beach, maybe, or a museum. Where were you really present? Or were you more focused on capturing the moment on your phone? Turns out, there's actual research behind that feeling. One study I came across said that when you take photos of something, your brain doesn't work as hard to remember it. They call it the photo taking impairment effect. It's like the brain goes, well, the camera's got this, I'll check out. Another study even suggested that just having your phone nearby, even if you're not using it, can lower your ability to remember things. So that's wild, right? The presence of your phone splits your attention like a tab constantly open in the background. And then there's this thing called the Google effect, which basically says if we know we can just search for something later, we're less likely to actually remember it. We're trusting our memory to the cloud. This lingered with me because I as well have been there. I've walked through beautiful places, taken the perfect photo, I guess, but weeks later, couldn't remember how the air smelled or how the ground felt beneath my feet. And then there's time itself. Why does it feel like some years fly by, like the pandemic years? Or why does it feel like the road going to a place takes forever, but the way back is faster? I read somewhere that it's because our brains stretch time when we're expecting something, when things feel new. But once the novelty fades, the moments collapse in on themselves. What struck me is how this connects to memory. If we don't live with novelty or aren't present with what we're seeing, we don't encode those moments into memory the same way. We don't build strong rooms in our mind's palace for those moments. They slip away not because they didn't happen, but because we didn't pay attention. So, memory techniques aren't just about remembering better, they're about living more fully. To notice what's strange, to feel what's real, to walk through our days not like tourists snapping photos, but like builders quietly adding doors and windows to the rooms in our minds. Because that's what memory really is, a place. And like any place, it only becomes a home when we spend time in it, aware, awake, alive. So maybe the best way to remember something isn't to save it to your phone. It's to stand still, breathe it in, and let it live inside you. And that's how you start building your own memory palace, one vivid moment at a time. And that's all for today's episode of the Little Word Podcast, part of our Mind Beyond Matter series. If this made your brain tingle or your heart feel something, you know what to do. Follow the podcast so you won't miss the next strange and wonderful drop. Rate and review. It's a small act that means the world to this indie pod. And support the show at Coffee if you'd like to help me make more curiosities like this one. And now, a little treat. I've released a bonus guided audio experience called The Garden of Still Growing Things. It's a soft companion to today's episode where we walk through a symbolic space in your memory palace. It's dreamy, reflective, and perfect for bedtime or quiet moments when you need a gentle pause. You can get it for free or pay whatever you want over at my coffee shop. This one's just a sample. I'm planning to create more premium hunting audio experiences in the future. And as always, link is in the show notes. But before we part ways, here's a whisper of what's coming next. Next time, be tuning into the controversial realm of bioresonance, sound healing, and the strange idea that we might be more waveform than flesh. It's science, it's pseudoscience, it's magic, and a bit messy. So don't miss it. And until next time, keep the strange close and the wonder closer. Thanks for listening.